Grace and Nate.
Hello, everyone. Elizabeth Talbot here. I'm so excited because today we start a new mini series entitled Fear Not. These are different times in which God says, do not fear. And today we are studying Fear Not, Dead Ends. And we will go through the event of the opening of the Red Sea. This is an event that has captured even Hollywood. Remember that old movie, 1956, with Charlton Heston, The Ten Commandments, and those special effects that opened the Red Sea. But what does this event have for our hearts in this moment when we are facing dead ends in our lives? Well, please come with me to Exodus chapter 14. We have left Egypt, have left slavery. We have been delivered by the blood of the Lamb. They are on their way to the promised land, and then something happens. Chapter 14 of Exodus, start on verse 1. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, tell the sons of Israel to turn back and camp before Pihahiroth, between Migdol and the sea. You shall camp in front of Baal-zephon, opposite by the sea. So God says, yeah, you're on your way, but turn back. Come back, and you're going to camp in a no way out situation. Mountain, sea, you cannot go forward. These are the dead end situations sometimes we face. And they faced a big one that will be repeated throughout the Bible because they always remembered this event. There was no way out. And God said in chapter 14, verse 4, that this way the Egyptians will know that He is God. There was going to be a purpose for His glory in this dead end. Pharaoh is going to think that they are wandering aimlessly, it says on verse 3. And it worked. That's what Pharaoh thought. And he said, what have we done? We have lost cheap labor. We have to go after them. And it says on verse 6, Pharaoh made his chariot ready and took his people with him. And he took 600 select chariots. These are like the SWAT team, right? And all the other chariots of Egypt. He took everyone and officers on the chariots. He was going to go after them to get them back to work for him. And in the meanwhile, these people are camped by the sea. They cannot go back. They don't have a way out. Have you ever felt that way? With no way out in your life? Well, this is where they are, in a dead end. And when they see Pharaoh coming with all the army, the 600 choice chariots, plus all the other chariots and all the officers, they are terrified. And we read here on verse 10, as Pharaoh drew near, the sons of Israel looked, and behold, the Egyptians were marching after them, and they became very frightened. They became terrified. And they had 3 questions, because sometimes we have questions during those dead ends in our lives. And they have 3 questions. And they say, why have you dealt with us in this way, bringing us out of Egypt? And they have another one. Is it because there were no graves in Egypt that you have taken us away to die in the wilderness? And the third one, is this not the word that we spoke to you in Egypt, saying, leave us alone that we may serve the Egyptians? For it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness. Oh, they say, why have you done this? Why don't you care? We're dying. What's going on? Maybe you and I can, relate to those questions when we meet dead ends. But you see, this is a human perspective. We get terrified because we're seeing it through human eyes. But God has a different viewpoint. And God's viewpoint starts on verse 13. Moses said to the people, do not fear. Here we have our word. Fear not, our little sentence. Fear not, do not fear. Stand by, or take your stand, and see the salvation of the Lord, which He will accomplish for you today. For the Egyptians whom you have seen today, you will never see them again. This is a play of in words of see and not see. The Egyptians whom you have seen, you will not see again, and you will see the salvation of the Lord instead. I'm going to change your focus, says God. And then verse 14, a wonderful verse. The Lord will fight for you while you keep silent. They were to take their stand and wait for the Lord to fight for them. You see, sometimes we are part of the battle, even though the battle is always the Lord. the Lord's, because he sometimes uses us as instruments. But every once in a while, we're in dead-end situations, no way out. And in those situations, God says, stand by and watch me. I will fight for you. And this is one of those situations. And then he says, verse 15 to Moses, tell the sons of Israel to go forward. Forward where exactly? There is no forward. And that's because God was going to do something different, because he makes a way where there is no way. And we are told that he achieved that. Chapter 14, verses 21 and 22. Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord swept the sea back by a strong east wind all night and turned the sea into dry land, and the waters were divided. And the sons of Israel went through the midst of the sea on dry land, and the waters were like a wall to them on their right hand and on their left. Even the Egyptians acknowledged that the Lord was fighting against them for Israel, right? So you can read that on verse 25. And after the whole thing is done, Israel saw the salvation that God had done for them. You can read this at the end of the chapter. And then they started this amazing celebration. In most Bibles, chapter 15 is called the Song of Moses, but really the song is about Yahweh, the Lord, and all that he has done and how he has redeemed his people. There's even a very interesting note at the end of the song on verse 20 that says that Miriam the prophetess, Aaron's sister, took the timbrel in her hand. And that's my question. Who packs a timbrel, right? When you're going to cross the desert, who says, oh yeah, I got to pack a timbrel? Well, somebody that is expecting a big achievement from God, something so extraordinary that they have to celebrate. And it says that Miriam took the timbrel in her hand, verse 20, and all the women went out after her with timbrels and with dancing, and they were singing this amazing victory of God. Well, it's interesting because this song is actually a metaphor of salvation. When we get to the last book of the Bible, chapter 15 of the book of Revelation, we find again in verses 2 to 4, the song of Moses. But this time it says that is also the song of the Lamb, because the Lamb is the one that has achieved our deliverance to the promised land. So are you facing an impossibility today? Are you in a no way out situation? You know, God actually specializes in impossibilities, of which our salvation cost him the most. It cost him the blood of the Son of God. And he died for us to make a way where there was no way. And he says now, go forward, because there's no dead end situations for God. And the challenge is, why don't you start celebrating now with your timbrel, even before you cross the sea? Because the truth is, that's the assurance that we have, that God is not going to leave us in a dead end, that he will say, go forward. Even if the sea is right in front of you and it looks like a dead end, God says, go forward, because I make a way where there is no way. And the fact that this song, the Song of Moses in Exodus 15, becomes the Song of Moses and the Lamb in Revelation 15 to show that it was a metaphor of our salvation, reminds you that there is nothing that you can face that God cannot handle or make a new way for. So remember, they're not dead ends for him. He says, go forward.